Wait! This is not my food!
Security guards gripping her arms on both sides. Passengers with their phones out, recording every second. And Christine Valdez, lead flight attendant for Transatlantic Airways, screaming at the top of her lungs as she's being dragged off the plane. "You can't do this to me. I've worked here for 15 years. 15 years. Her perfectly styled blonde bob coming undone, her gold name badge catching the light one last time before she's escorted through the jet bridge and out of sight. But how did we get here? How does a decorated flight attendant with over a decade of service end up humiliated in front of hundreds of passengers, her career destroyed in a single moment? It all started with an 11-year-old girl and a meal tray. Let me take you back to where this really began. JFK International Airport, Gate 47, Transatlantic Airways Flight 447 to London Heathrow. The boarding announcement had just been made for first-class passengers, and among the business travelers in expensive suits and designer luggage, there was Naomi Winters. 11 years old. Brown skin glowing under those harsh cabin lights that somehow made her look even more beautiful. Box braids cascading down her shoulders, decorated with purple beads that clicked softly when she moved her head. She wore a vintage Fleetwood Mac t-shirt that was clearly her favorite, the fabric soft and faded from too many washes, and clutched in her small hands was a worn astronomy book, pages dog-eared from constant reading. Around her neck hung an unaccompanied minor tag, bright yellow, impossible to miss. This was Naomi's first time flying internationally alone, and you could see the nervousness radiating off her in waves. Every few seconds, she'd pull out her phone, checking for texts from her mom. Scrolling. Hoping. Waiting for those 3 dots that meant someone was thinking about her. See, Naomi hadn't seen her mother in 3 months. 3 whole months. Vivienne Winters was always working, always on another business trip, another meeting, another deal that couldn't wait. And Naomi understood, or at least she tried to. She was a smart kid. Mature beyond her years. But understanding didn't make the loneliness hurt any less. She remembered the last conversation they'd had before her mom left. Vivienne had knelt down, taken Naomi's face in her hands, and promised, "I'll make this summer special, baby. Just one more business trip. One more, and then we'll have all the time in the world together in London. I promise. One more business trip." That's what it always was. One more. But today was supposed to be different. Today, Naomi was flying to London to finally be with her mom for the whole summer. No more video calls. No more goodnight texts instead of goodnight hugs. Just 2 months of making up for lost time. As Naomi made her way down the aisle towards seat 4B, her astronomy book pressed against her chest like a shield, she had no idea that this flight would change everything. That the next few hours would expose cruelty she didn't know existed. That by the time this plane landed, nothing would ever be the same. The first-class cabin was exactly what you'd expect. Spacious leather seats. Warm lighting. That distinct smell of expensive cologne and complimentary champagne. Naomi found her seat by the window and carefully stowed her small backpack in the overhead compartment, standing on her tiptoes to reach. And that's when Christine Valdez entered the picture. 42 years old. 15 years with Transatlantic Airways. A perfectly styled blonde bob that looked like she'd just stepped out of a salon. Makeup applied with precision. Uniform pressed and pristine. And that gold name badge pinned to her chest, the one they only gave to senior flight attendants, gleaming like a badge of honor. Christine moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency, greeting passengers as they boarded. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Harrison. So wonderful to see you again." Her smile bright and genuine. "Mrs. Pemberton, let me help you with that bag." Her voice dripping with warmth. To the white passengers, Christine Valdez was the picture of perfect service. Attentive. Kind. Professional. But if you watched closely, if you really paid attention, you'd notice something. A shift. Subtle but unmistakable. When passengers of color boarded, her smile tightened. Her voice lost its warmth. Her helpfulness evaporated. A quick nod instead of a greeting. A glance instead of eye contact. Service delivered with efficiency but without soul. Behind Christine came Tyler Brennan, the junior flight attendant. 26 years old, new to the airline, still had that eager energy of someone who genuinely loved their job. Tyler had kind eyes, the type of person who noticed when someone needed help before they even asked. He watched Christine work, observed her interactions, and something in his gut told him that the way she treated people wasn't quite right. But he was new. Low on the hierarchy. And Christine had 15 years of seniority to his 6 months. As more passengers settled in, the first-class cabin filled with an interesting mix of personalities. In seat 2 sat Gerald Hartwick. Mid-50s, expensive suit, louder than necessary, the type of businessman who needed everyone within a 20-foot radius to know exactly how important he was. Before the plane even pushed back from the gate, he'd already complained about the temperature, the pillow firmness, and the fact that his champagne wasn't cold enough. "Do you know who I am?" was practically his catchphrase. Gerald was the kind of passenger flight attendants dreaded and tolerated in equal measure. But in seats 3C and 3D sat Patricia and Robert Chen, and they were the complete opposite. Both in their 70s, dressed modestly but elegantly, holding hands like teenagers. They were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary with a trip to London, something they'd saved for years to afford. Patricia had gentle eyes that seemed to absorb everything around her, and Robert had the quiet strength of a man who'd spent a lifetime listening more than he spoke. They were the kind of people who noticed things. Who paid attention. Who cared. The boarding door sealed shut. The safety announcement played on the overhead screens. The plane pushed back from the gate, and transatlantic Flight 447 began its taxi toward the runway. Naomi pressed her face against the window, watching the airport lights blur past. Her phone was in her lap, screen dark. No new messages from Mom. She told herself it was fine. Mom was busy. Mom always answered eventually. She didn't know that sitting a few rows ahead of her, Christine Valdez had already noticed her. Already made judgments. Already decided what kind of service an 11-year-old black girl traveling alone deserved. And as the plane lifted off into the sky, climbing through the clouds toward cruising altitude, none of the passengers had any idea what was about to unfold. Before we continue with what happened next, do me a favor. If you're invested in Naomi's story, if you want to see where this goes, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens when Christine Valdez starts the meal service is going to shock you. And trust me, you don't want to miss a single moment of what's coming. Here's my question for you. Have you ever witnessed someone being treated unfairly and wished you'd spoken up? Drop your answer in the comments, because that choice, that decision to act or stay silent, is about to become the center of everything that happens next. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Flight attendants, prepare the cabin for meal service." And that's when everything started to go wrong. The meal service began exactly 1 hour into the flight, right on schedule. Christine Valdez emerged from the galley pushing the first-class cart, and if you didn't know any better, you'd think she was the perfect flight attendant. Professional. Polished. Ready to serve. She started at the front of the cabin, row 1, and worked her way back with methodical precision. And here's what you need to understand about Christine in these moments. When she approached certain passengers, her entire demeanor transformed. It was like watching someone flip a switch. "Mr. Davidson, how are we doing today?" Her voice warm like honey. "Can I offer you the braised lamb with rosemary reduction, the herb-crusted salmon, or perhaps the chicken piccata?" She rattled off the options with genuine enthusiasm, leaning in slightly, making him feel like the most important person on the plane. Mr. Davidson chose the salmon. "Excellent choice, sir. And can I bring you another glass of that Chardonnay you were enjoying?" 2 rows back, she stopped at the Harrison family. "Mrs. Harrison, you look lovely today. Now, for you and your husband, we have some wonderful options." Again, that same warmth. That same attentiveness. The children got special treatment too. And for these little ones, we have the chicken fingers with a chocolate chip cookie. Does that sound good? The kids nodded eagerly. Christine smiled like she was everyone's favorite aunt. This was the Christine Valdez that passengers wrote glowing reviews about. The one who earned that gold badge. The one with 15 years of supposedly exemplary service. But then she reached row 4. Seat 4B. Naomi Winters sat there with her astronomy book open on her lap, though she wasn't really reading. She was too nervous, too aware of everything happening around her. When she saw Christine's car approaching, she sat up straighter, tried to look older than her 11 years, prepared herself to order like she'd seen the adults do. Christine stopped at her row. And the switch flipped. No warm greeting. No smile. No leaning in to make her feel welcome. Just 2 words, delivered flat and cold. Chicken or beef? That's it. Not hello, sweetheart. Not what can I get for you today? Not even a basic acknowledgement that an 11-year-old child was sitting there alone, wearing an unaccompanied minor tag, clearly nervous about her first international flight. Just, chicken or beef? Naomi blinked, thrown off by the sudden shift in energy. She'd been watching Christine interact with the other passengers, heard the options she'd offered them, seen the menus in the seat pocket that listed all the first-class meals. The salmon, please? Naomi's voice was small, uncertain. I saw it on the menu in. Christine cut her off before she could finish. That's for premium meals. You get chicken or beef. Naomi's face scrunched up in confusion. She glanced down at her ticket, the one her mom had printed out and triple-checked before Naomi left. First class. Seat 4B. It was right there in black and white. But this is first class? The question came out more uncertain than Naomi intended, like she was asking permission to be where she already belonged. Christine's jaw tightened, irritation flashing across her face. Standard first class. The salmon is for preferred members only. Now, chicken or beef? This was a lie. A complete, deliberate lie. Every first-class passenger on transatlantic airways got access to the full menu. There was no such thing as standard versus premium first class. No tiered system. No restricted meals based on membership status. Christine Valdez had just invented that rule on the spot, standing there in the aisle, looking down at an 11-year-old black girl who had every right to order whatever she wanted. Back in the galley, Tyler Brennan stood frozen, watching this interaction unfold. His hands gripped the counter, and you could see the discomfort written all over his face. He knew something was wrong. He knew that wasn't how the meal service worked. But Christine was his superior. She had 15 years of experience to his 6 months. Who was he to question her? Still, everything in him screamed that this wasn't right. Naomi's shoulders slumped slightly. She looked down at her astronomy book, then back up at Christine, and quietly said, "Chicken, please." Her voice was smaller now. Defeated. Like she'd already learned that pushing back would only make things worse. Christine nodded once, sharp and dismissive, and moved on without another word. Tyler couldn't take it anymore. He stepped out from the galley, approaching Christine as she prepared the meal trays. He kept his voice low, not wanting to cause a scene. "We have extra salmon, and all first-class passengers get access to the full menu." Christine whipped around, her eyes flashing with something dangerous. She didn't yell, but her whisper was somehow more cutting than any shout could have been. "I'll handle passenger relations, thank you. Just do your job." The message was clear. Stay in your lane. Don't question me. I'm in charge here. Tyler stepped back, his face flushing with embarrassment and frustration. He wanted to help. He wanted to do the right thing. But the power dynamics were stacked against him, and he knew it. Already, something feels wrong, doesn't it? You can sense it. That uncomfortable tension when you're watching someone be mistreated and you're not sure if you should intervene. That moment when you know something isn't fair but you're afraid of the consequences of speaking up. Keep that feeling in mind, because it's about to get so much worse. Christine continued her service, and the contrast was staggering. Gerald Hartwick in seat 2A received special treatment that bordered on absurd. Christine approached him with a meal that wasn't even on the standard menu. Lobster tail with drawn butter and asparagus, specially ordered for their high-value frequent flyers. "Mr. Hartwick, I have your requested meal. I made sure the chef prepared it exactly to your specifications." Gerald barely looked up from his laptop. "About time. And make sure the butter is actually hot this time." "Of course, sir. My apologies for last flight. Can I get you anything else?" No irritation. No attitude. Just endless patience for a man who'd been rude from the moment he boarded. 2 rows back, Christine served Patricia and Robert Chin their salmon with genuine warmth returning to her voice. "Here you are, folks. Congratulations again on your anniversary. 50 years is quite an achievement." Patricia smiled sweetly. "Thank you, dear. This looks wonderful. Enjoy, and let me know if you need anything at all." See the difference? See how Christine could turn it on and off like a faucet? Warmth and kindness for some. Cold indifference for others. And the deciding factor wasn't behavior or manners or respect. It was something else entirely. Something that 11-year-old Naomi Winters couldn't change about herself no matter how polite she was. Then Christine returned to row 4 with Naomi's meal. She placed the tray down on Naomi's table with a dull thud, not the gentle placement the other passengers received. And Naomi stared down at it, her heart sinking. It wasn't chicken. The tray held a portion of beef, and it looked awful. Dry. Reheated. The kind of meal that had clearly been sitting too long under heat lamps. The vegetables beside it were shriveled, and the sauce had congealed into something unappetizing. Naomi looked up at Christine, confusion and worry mixing on her young face. "I'm sorry, I ordered chicken." Her tone was so polite. So careful. She wasn't being demanding or rude. She was just a kid trying to understand why she wasn't getting what she'd asked for. Christine's response was laced with annoyance, like Naomi was inconveniencing her by simply existing. "This is what we have. You can eat it or go hungry." Naomi's eyes widened. She stared down at the beef, and her stomach twisted into knots. Not just because it looked unappetizing, but because of something Christine didn't know. Something Christine should have known, because Naomi had mentioned it during the pre-boarding check when Christine had verified her unaccompanied minor status. Naomi was allergic to beef. Not deathly allergic, not the kind that would send her into anaphylactic shock, but enough that eating it would make her violently ill. Nausea. Stomach cramps. Hours of misery. And she'd told Christine this. Clearly. When Christine had asked about dietary restrictions. Christine had written it down on her passenger manifest and then completely ignored it. Naomi's voice came out quieter now, almost pleading. "I told you before. I can't eat beef. It makes me sick." Christine's expression didn't soften. If anything, it hardened further. She crossed her arms, looking down at this 11-year-old child like she was a problem to be solved rather than a passenger to be served. "Then you should have planned better. I can get you pretzels." Pretzels. On a 6-hour international flight. For a child who'd already been denied proper food once. And that's when Gerald Hartwick decided to add his opinion. Because of course he did. He'd been half listening to the exchange while working on his laptop, and now he looked up with a smirk that made your skin crawl. His voice carried across the cabin, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Kids these days are so picky." He said it like it was a joke. Like Naomi's food allergy was a personality flaw. Like her very reasonable request for the chicken she'd ordered was somehow entitled behavior. Naomi's face burned with shame. Her eyes dropped to her lap, and she wished more than anything that she could just disappear. Tyler had been watching from the galley, and he couldn't stay silent anymore. He stepped forward, his voice firm despite his junior status. "I can get her the salmon. We have extra portions, in." Christine spun on him, and this time her voice was sharp enough to cut. "Touch that galley cart and I'll write you up. Do you understand me?" The threat hung in the air. A written report could derail Tyler's entire career before it even started. He was still in his probationary period. One bad mark and he could be terminated without cause. Tyler's hands fell to his sides. He looked at Naomi, and the helplessness in his eyes was almost as painful as Christine's cruelty. Naomi's eyes began to water, but she didn't let the tears fall. She'd been through this before. Different situations, different people, but the same underlying message: you don't matter as much as everyone else. You don't deserve the same treatment. You should be grateful for whatever scraps you're given. She reached for her phone with trembling hands and typed out a text to her mom. "Mom, can you call the airline? The flight attendant won't give me food." She hit send and watched the message status change to delivered. Then she stared at the screen, waiting for those 3 dots that meant her mom was typing back. Nothing. Of course nothing. Her mom was in meetings. Always in meetings. Saving the world while Naomi sat here, alone, being treated like she didn't matter. Naomi put her phone face down on her armrest, picked up her astronomy book, and opened it to a random page. She wasn't reading. The words blurred together. But holding the book made her feel less exposed, less vulnerable. Like she could hide behind the pages and pretend none of this was happening. She'd learned this survival technique years ago. When the world was cruel, you made yourself small. You disappeared into books and thoughts and dreams about distant galaxies where maybe, just maybe, people were kinder to each other. Her face was a portrait of barely contained emotion. Hurt. Confusion. That specific kind of pain that comes from being treated as less than human for reasons you can't control. But she was trying to be strong. Trying not to cry in front of all these strangers who clearly thought she was the problem. Then her phone vibrated against the armrest. The screen lit up, Mom calling. Naomi grabbed the phone, her heart leaping. Her mom was calling. Her mom would fix this. Her mom always fixed everything. But then Naomi looked around the cabin. At Christine standing near the galley, watching her with that cold expression. At Gerald Hartwick still smirking over his lobster. At all these strangers who'd already witnessed her humiliation. And something in Naomi just broke. She couldn't answer. Couldn't let her mom hear her voice crack. Couldn't admit that she was being treated this way. Because admitting it out loud would make it real. Would make her feel even smaller than she already did. So Naomi let the call go to voicemail. She set the phone back down, opened her astronomy book to a chapter about black holes, and tried to lose herself in the science of things being pulled apart by forces beyond their control. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Before we go any further, I need you to do something. If this story is making you feel something, if Naomi's situation is hitting you in the chest, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next is going to test every passenger on this plane. And the question becomes, who will stand up for a child when the person in power refuses to do what's right? Here's what I want to know from you: if you were Tyler in that moment, risking your entire career to help a child, what would you have done? Would you have grabbed that salmon anyway? Stayed silent? Found another way? Tell me in the comments, because this moral dilemma is about to get even more complicated, and I want to know where you stand. Christine Valdez returned to the galley, completely unbothered by what she'd just done. And Naomi Winters sat in seat 4B, surrounded by luxuries she couldn't enjoy, holding a book she couldn't read, with an empty stomach and a phone full of unanswered love from a mother who had no idea her daughter was suffering. But that phone was about to ring again. And this time, what happened next would change everything. The meal service ended, trays were collected, and the cabin settled into that mid-flight quiet where most passengers dozed off or lost themselves in movies. But for Naomi Winters in seat 4B, the nightmare was just beginning. Because what happened with the meal wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't one bad moment that could be written off as a misunderstanding or a mistake. It was a pattern. And over the next few hours, that pattern became impossible to ignore. About 30 minutes after the meal service, Naomi pressed her call button. The little chime sounded, and the light above her seat illuminated. She needed water. Her throat was dry from not eating, from holding back tears, from trying to stay invisible. Christine was at the front of the cabin, chatting with Gerald Hartwick about his business ventures, laughing at his jokes that probably weren't even funny. She glanced back when Naomi's call button lit up. Saw it. Registered it. And then deliberately turned back to her conversation. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Naomi sat there, watching that light above her seat, wondering if maybe the button was broken. Maybe Christine hadn't seen it. Maybe she should press it again. She pressed it again. Christine finally approached, and the irritation was written all over her face. No polite smile. No, how can I help you? Just an expectant stare that made Naomi feel like she was already being a burden before she even spoke. Could I have some water, please? Naomi's voice was barely above a whisper. Christine nodded once and disappeared. When she returned, she placed a small plastic cup on Naomi's tray table. The kind of cup you'd get in economy. Flimsy. Cheap. Filled only halfway. Naomi stared at it, then glanced around the cabin. Every other first-class passenger had real glassware. Heavy, elegant glasses that caught the light. The Chens had crystal water glasses with lemon wedges. Gerald had a tumbler with ice that clinked when he moved it. But Naomi got a plastic cup. The kind that would crack if you squeezed it too hard. She didn't say anything. Just took a small sip and set it down, the taste of injustice more bitter than the recycled air. An hour later, Naomi's headphones tangled while she was trying to watch a movie. She'd been shifting in her seat, uncomfortable and restless, and the cord had somehow wrapped around the armrest and knotted itself into a frustrating mess. She tugged at it gently, trying not to break anything, but the knot only tightened. Her fingers were too small, too inexperienced with this kind of problem. Christine walked right past her row, saw Naomi struggling, and kept moving without breaking stride. But 2 rows up, when Patricia Chen's reading light malfunctioned, Christine stopped immediately. "Oh, Mrs. Chen, let me help you with that." Her voice warm and concerned. She fiddled with the light, got it working, then noticed Patricia's blanket had slipped. "Here, let me adjust this for you. We want you comfortable." Patricia thanked her sweetly, but her eyes tracked Christine as she walked away. Then Patricia looked back at Naomi, still wrestling with her tangled headphones, and something hardened in the elderly woman's expression. She leaned toward her husband Robert and whispered, just loud enough that the words carried, "That woman is treating that child terribly." Robert squeezed his wife's hand. He'd noticed it too. They both had. And it made their stomachs turn. 30 minutes after that, Naomi needed to use the bathroom. She was 11 years old on a 6-hour flight. She'd been holding it, not wanting to bother anyone, but she couldn't wait any longer. She pressed her call button. The light went on. The chime sounded. Christine was in the galley, organizing supplies. She saw the light. Naomi could see her see it. And Christine turned her back and continued organizing. 2 minutes later, Gerald Hartwick pressed his call button. Christine appeared in his seat within 15 seconds. "Yes, Mr. Hartwick, what can I do for you?" "I need to use the lavatory." "Is it occupied?" "Let me check for you, sir." Christine walked back, checked the bathroom, and returned to inform him it was available. She even stood in the aisle to make sure no one else got there first, holding the space for him like he was royalty. Naomi watched this entire exchange from her seat, her call button still illuminated, still waiting, still ignored. When Christine finally walked past her row again, Naomi spoke up softly, "Excuse me, I need to use the bathroom too." Christine barely slowed down. "It's available. Go ahead." No assistance. No courtesy. Just those 3 words tossed over her shoulder. But Tyler Brennan had been watching. All of it. Every dismissive gesture, every moment of neglect, every instance where Christine's treatment of Naomi stood in stark contrast to how she treated everyone else. And Tyler made a decision. When Christine took her break, when she disappeared into the crew rest area for her mandatory downtime, Tyler became Naomi's secret guardian angel. He appeared at her seat with a proper glass of water, the crystal kind the other passengers had. "Here you go. And I brought you some extra snacks from first class. The good ones." He handed her a package of gourmet crackers, some cheese, a chocolate bar that was definitely not the standard offering. Naomi looked up at him with wide eyes, surprised that someone actually saw her. Actually cared. "Thank you," she whispered. Tyler smiled. "You doing okay? First time flying alone can be tough." Naomi nodded, but her eyes betrayed her. She wasn't okay. Not even close. "If you need anything, anything at all, you let me know. Okay?" He said it with such sincerity that Naomi almost cried right there. Because it had been hours since anyone on this plane had treated her like a human being who mattered. Tyler continued this throughout the flight. When Christine wasn't looking, he'd check on Naomi. Bring her things she needed. Offer her a warm smile that said, "I see you, and this isn't right." It wasn't enough to fix what was happening. But it was something. A small light in what had become a very dark experience. Then, about 4 hours into the flight, the turbulence hit. The seatbelt sign chimed on, and the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Flight attendants, please be seated. We're experiencing some rough air." Most passengers had their tray tables up, their seats in the upright position, everything secured properly. But Naomi's tray table was still down. She'd been drawing in the margins of her astronomy book, trying to distract herself, and hadn't thought to put it away. Christine had walked past her row 3 times during the pre-turbulence checks. 3 times she'd reminded other passengers to secure their belongings. 3 times she'd looked directly at Naomi's extended tray table and said nothing. It was negligence. Plain and simple. Part of a flight attendant's job is to ensure passenger safety, especially for unaccompanied minors who might not know the protocols. The plane hit a pocket of rough air and dropped suddenly. Naomi's plastic cup of water, the one sitting on her tray table, flew up and then crashed down. Water exploded everywhere. All over her astronomy book, the pages immediately soaking through. All over her Fleetwood Mac t-shirt, her favorite shirt, now drenched and cold. All over her lap, seeping into her jeans. Naomi gasped, grabbing for the book, trying to save it, but it was too late. The pages were already warping, the ink bleeding, years of notes and dog-eared memories being destroyed in real time. And then Christine stormed over. Not with concern. Not with an apology for failing to ensure Naomi's tray was secured. But with anger. "Why didn't you secure your tray?" Her voice was sharp, accusatory, like this was entirely Naomi's fault. Naomi looked up at her, voice shaking, water dripping from her shirt onto the seat. "I didn't know how, this is my first time." Christine cut her off, her tone dripping with disdain. "Well, clean it up. There are napkins in the bathroom. No offer to help. No, let me get you some towels. No, are you okay?" Just a command to clean up the mess that Christine's own negligence had allowed to happen. Naomi sat there, soaked and humiliated, holding her ruined book, and that's when Gerald Hartwick decided to chime in again. He chuckled from his seat, loud enough for half the cabin to hear. "Where are this kid's parents?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Like Naomi's situation was somehow proof of bad parenting. Like she deserved this treatment because she was traveling alone. And Christine, who should have defended her passenger, who should have shut down that inappropriate comment, instead made it worse. She turned toward Gerald, and loud enough for others to hear, loud enough to ensure maximum humiliation, she said, "Exactly what I was wondering. Flying alone, can't even manage a tray table." The words hit Naomi like a physical blow. Her hands started shaking. Her vision blurred. That crushing weight of shame and helplessness that she'd been holding back for hours finally became too much. Naomi stood up abruptly, her astronomy book falling to the floor with a wet thud. She pushed past Christine, stumbling slightly, and rushed toward the bathroom. She locked the door behind her, and that's when the dam finally broke. Naomi Winters, 11 years old, 3,000 miles from home, standing in a tiny airplane bathroom in her wet clothes, finally let herself cry. Not quiet tears. Not dignified sadness. But the kind of sobbing that shakes your whole body. The kind that comes from being systematically dehumanized for hours with no escape and no one to protect you. She looked at herself in the mirror. Box braids still perfect because her mom had done them with so much care. Purple beads catching the harsh bathroom light. Face streaked with tears. Shirt soaked through. And she thought about her mom's promise. "I'll make this summer special, baby." This was supposed to be special. This was supposed to be the start of 2 perfect months together. Instead, Naomi had learned a lesson she'd spend years trying to unlearn, that sometimes, no matter how polite you are, no matter how careful, no matter how much you follow the rules, there are people who will treat you as less than human simply because of what you look like. Back in the cabin, Patricia Chin had seen enough. She unbuckled her seatbelt the moment the turbulence eased, stood up with a determination that belied her 70 years, and marched straight to where Tyler was checking on passengers. "Young man." Her voice was quiet but firm. "I need the name of your supervisor and the airline's customer service number." Tyler's face went pale. He glanced toward the crew rest area where Christine was still on break. "Ma'am, if this is about Christine, she's the lead on this flight." "Then I need corporate." Patricia's eyes were steel. "That woman has no business working with children. Or anyone else, for that matter." Tyler hesitated. He could lose his job for this. For going around his superior. For providing information that could lead to an official complaint. But then he thought about Naomi, crying in that bathroom, and he made his choice. He pulled out a piece of paper and quickly wrote down a phone number and an email address. He slid it across to Patricia like they were exchanging state secrets. "This is the direct line to customer relations," he whispered. "And this email goes straight to the VP of Flight Operations. If you mention flight number 447 and today's date, they'll pull the manifests and footage." Patricia took the paper and folded it carefully. "Thank you. You're a good person." Tyler just nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Back in seat 4B, Naomi's phone had been buzzing. Once. Twice. 3 times. When she finally emerged from the bathroom, eyes red but face washed, trying to compose herself, she picked up her phone and saw the messages. "Baby, I'm so sorry I missed your call. In a board meeting. Landing in 4 hours. Everything okay? Naomi? You there, sweetheart? Getting worried. Text me back when you can." Her mom. Her mom, who was always in meetings, always working, always one call away but somehow never available when it mattered most. Naomi stared at those messages, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. She could tell her mom everything. Could explain what was happening. Could ask for help. But what would her mom do from London? Call the airline? Make a complaint that wouldn't matter until after this flight was over? Get angry and upset while Naomi still had 2 more hours trapped in this situation? No. Telling her mom would just make mom feel guilty and helpless. And Naomi was tired of being the reason her mom felt guilty. So Naomi locked her phone without responding. She sat back down in her seat, picked up her ruined astronomy book, and tried to smooth out the wrinkled pages even though she knew they'd never be the same. She was shutting down. Pulling inward. Building walls around herself because that's what you do when the world proves it's not safe. And Christine Valdez returned from her break, saw Naomi sitting there in her damp clothes with her ruined book, and felt absolutely nothing. If you're still watching this, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next is going to restore your faith that sometimes, someone does step up. Sometimes, the witnesses matter. And Patricia Chin is about to prove that one person with courage can change everything. Here's my question. Have you ever been in Patricia's position? Witnessed someone being mistreated and had to decide whether to get involved? What did you do? Drop it in the comments, because that decision, that choice to act or stay silent, is what separates bystanders from heroes. The plane continued its journey across the Atlantic. 35,000 feet in the air. Nowhere to go. No escape. But in seat 3C, Patricia Chen sat with that piece of paper in her hand, and she wasn't just going to wait until they landed. She pulled out her phone, made sure it was in airplane mode compliance, and started documenting everything she'd witnessed. Every interaction. Every dismissive gesture. Every moment of Christine's cruelty. Because Patricia Chen had lived through 70 years of watching injustice happen. And she'd decided a long time ago that staying silent was no longer an option. Robert squeezed her hand, and she looked at him. No words needed to pass between them. They'd been married 50 years. They understood each other perfectly. They were going to make sure that little girl got justice. Even if it meant taking on an entire airline to do it. The plane's wheels touched down on the Heathrow runway with that familiar thud and screech of rubber on tarmac. After 6 hours in the air, Flight 447 had finally reached London. The seatbelt sign chimed off, and passengers immediately jumped up, grabbing their carry-ons from overhead bins, eager to stretch their legs and escape the recycled air. The cabin filled with that end-of-flight energy, people chatting about their plans, businessmen already on their phones, families gathering their scattered belongings. In seat 4B, Naomi Winters moved slowly. She gathered her things with the careful precision of someone who'd learned not to draw attention to herself. Her ruined astronomy book went into her backpack, pages still damp and warped. Her tangled headphones wrapped around her fingers. Her phone clutched in one hand. She was still wearing that stained Fleetwood Mac t-shirt. Still damp in places. The water had dried in weird patterns that left visible marks across the fabric. Her box braids were slightly disheveled from hours of trying to disappear into her seat. The purple beads still clicked softly when she moved, but somehow the sound seemed sadder now. As passengers filed toward the exit, Christine Valdez stood near the galley, offering her practiced farewells. "Thank you for flying with us. Have a wonderful time in London. Safe travels. All smiles. All warmth." The perfect flight attendant sending off her satisfied customers. Gerald Hartwick passed by, and Christine's smile brightened even more. "Mr. Hartwick, always a pleasure. We'll see you on the return flight. Make sure that lobster is on the menu again, Christine." "I'll personally ensure it, sir." Patricia and Robert Chen walked past with their anniversary roses from the flight crew, a special touch Christine had arranged for them. "Enjoy your celebration, you too." But when Naomi approached, carrying her backpack and looking so small in that damaged shirt, Christine's demeanor shifted one final time. "Make sure you have all your belongings. We're not responsible for lost items." That's what she said. Only to Naomi. Not a kind goodbye. Not a safe travels, sweetheart. Not even a basic acknowledgement of the child she'd systematically mistreated for 6 hours. Just a warning about lost items, delivered with the emotional warmth of a legal disclaimer. Naomi nodded without making eye contact and continued toward the door. As she stepped into the jet bridge, she glanced back one last time. Tyler was standing there in the galley, and when their eyes met, he mouthed 2 words. "I'm sorry." His face was full of genuine regret. Sorry he hadn't done more. Sorry the system had protected Christine instead of Naomi. Sorry that being right didn't matter when power was stacked against you. Naomi gave him a small nod. She didn't blame Tyler. He'd tried. That was more than most people had done. She was halfway down the jet bridge when she heard a voice behind her. "Sweetheart?" Naomi turned to find Patricia Chen, moving as quickly as her 70-year-old legs would carry her, Robert just behind her. Patricia's face was full of concern. "Are you being picked up? Do you have someone meeting you?" For the first time in hours, Naomi's face brightened just a little. "My mom." "Good. Patricia reached out and gently touched Naomi's shoulder. Good. You tell her everything that happened on that flight. Everything. Do you understand me? Don't leave anything out. Naomi nodded, not fully understanding why this elderly woman cared so much, but grateful that someone did. You're a strong, beautiful young lady, Patricia continued, her eyes getting misty. And what happened to you today was wrong. Don't ever think it was your fault. Robert added quietly, your mother needs to know. Promise us you'll tell her. I promise, Naomi whispered. Patricia squeezed her shoulder once more, then let her go. Naomi continued through customs, through the long corridors of Heathrow Airport, following the signs toward arrivals. Her heart was pounding now, anticipation mixing with anxiety. She was about to see her mom for the first time in 3 months. And she had no idea how to explain the last 6 hours. The arrivals area at Heathrow was chaos. Crowds of people pressed against barriers, holding signs, scanning faces, waiting for loved ones. Naomi emerged through the sliding doors, overwhelmed by the noise and the sea of strangers. She stood on her tiptoes, searching the crowd, her eyes scanning desperately. And then she heard it. Naomi. The voice cut through everything. Loud. Clear. Full of love and relief. Naomi's head whipped around, and there she was. Vivienne Winters. 40 years old and absolutely stunning. Skin the same rich brown as her daughter's, glowing under the airport lights. She wore a charcoal power suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, perfectly tailored, screaming success and authority. Her hair was styled in elegant locks that fell past her shoulders. Diamond studs in her ears caught the light. She had the kind of presence that made people instinctively move out of her way. But right now, all that power and poise melted away as she saw her daughter. Vivienne pushed through the crowd, not caring who she had to move past, her eyes locked on Naomi. When she reached her, she dropped to her knees right there in the middle of Heathrow Airport and scooped Naomi into her arms. Baby. Oh, baby, I missed you so much. Naomi buried her face in her mother's neck and held on like she'd never let go. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The flight. Christine. The humiliation. None of it mattered because she was finally in her mother's arms. But then Vivienne pulled back slightly, her hands cupping Naomi's face, and her expression changed. Baby, why is your shirt wet? Her eyes scanned her daughter's appearance, taking in details a mother always notices. The damp stains. The disheveled hair. The redness around Naomi's eyes. Have you been crying? And that's when Naomi broke. Everything she'd been holding back, all the strength she'd forced herself to maintain, all the walls she'd built around her emotions for the past 6 hours, it all came crashing down. The words poured out of her in a rush, stumbling over each other. The meal service. The beef allergy Christine ignored. The plastic cup while everyone else got glassware. The ignored call button. The ruined book. The humiliation. Gerald's comments. Christine's cruelty. All of it spilled out while Vivienne held her daughter's face, her expression growing darker with every word. Other passengers from Flight 447 were filtering through arrivals, some of them slowing down when they recognized Naomi, when they saw this reunion happening. And that's when Patricia Chan approached. She'd been watching from a distance, making sure Naomi found her mother. Now she stepped forward with purpose. Excuse me, are you this child's mother? Vivienne stood, one arm still wrapped protectively around Naomi. Yes, is everything. Patricia cut her off, her voice firm and clear. Your daughter was mistreated on that flight. Discriminated against. Systematically. For 6 hours. And I have names and documentation. Vivienne's entire body went rigid. Her jaw clenched. When she spoke, her voice was dangerously calm. What do you mean, mistreated? Patricia pulled out her phone. I documented everything. The flight attendant's name is Christine Valdez. Lead attendant. 15 years with Transatlantic Airways. She denied your daughter food, ignored her medical needs, humiliated her in front of other passengers, and showed a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior. She showed Vivienne her notes. Timestamps. Descriptions. Even a few discreet photos she'd managed to take. There was also a passenger, Gerald Hartwick in seat 2A, who made inappropriate comments about your daughter. And other witnesses can corroborate everything. Robert stepped forward. We saw it all, ma'am. That woman had no business treating a child that way. Treating anyone that way. Vivienne's hand trembled slightly as she took Patricia's phone, scrolling through the documentation. Her face was a mask of controlled fury, the kind that's more terrifying than any explosion of anger could ever be. Thank you, Vivienne said quietly. Thank you for looking out for my daughter. May I have your contact information? Patricia was already writing it down. Patricia Chen. That's my husband Robert. We're staying at the Savoy if you need us to provide formal statements. Behind them, near the customs exit, Christine Valdez and Tyler Brennan were walking through, pulling their crew luggage. Christine was already thinking about her plans for the evening. A glass of wine. A hot bath. Maybe she'd call her friend Sandra and complain about that difficult child on the flight. Make herself the victim of an exhausting day dealing with ungrateful passengers. She glanced across the arrivals area and spotted Naomi standing with a well-dressed woman. Christine rolled her eyes. Of course. Helicopter parent showed up. They always do. Tyler had gone quiet. He was staring at the woman holding Naomi, and something was nagging at his memory. Something familiar about her face. He pulled out his phone, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. Tyler's voice came out strangled. Do you know who that woman is? Christine barely glanced over, her attention on getting through the airport. Some helicopter parent probably. They always complain. File a grievance if you want, but nothing ever comes of it. The airline always sides with experienced crew. Tyler's face had gone completely white. His hands were shaking as he held up his phone to Christine. The screen showed a news article from just 8 days ago. The headline in bold letters. Vivienne Winters, CEO of Apex Global Ventures, closes $4 billion airline acquisition. Below it was a photo. The same woman currently holding Naomi. The same elegant walks. The same powerful presence. The article continued, in a stunning move that shocked the aviation industry, tech billionaire and venture capital mogul Vivienne Winters has acquired Transatlantic Airways in a $4 billion deal. Winters, known for her aggressive restructuring of underperforming companies, promises significant operational changes beginning immediately. Christine's carry-on bag slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. The color drained from her face so quickly you'd think someone had pulled a plug. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Tyler was still scrolling, his voice getting higher with each word. She just bought Transatlantic Airways. Last week. The deal closed last Monday. She owns the airline. She owns our jobs. She owns everything. Christine's eyes went wide. Her breath came in short gasps. She looked across the arrivals hall at Vivienne Winters, CEO of Apex Global Ventures, Billionaire, and new owner of the airline Christine had worked for 15 years. The same Vivienne Winters whose 11-year-old daughter Christine had spent 6 hours systematically humiliating. No. The word came out as a whisper. No, that can't be. But it was. And the worst part? Vivienne had just looked up from Patricia's phone. Her eyes swept across the arrivals area and landed directly on Christine Valdez. Their eyes met across the crowded terminal. And Christine watched as recognition, then understanding, then absolute cold fury passed across Vivienne Winters' face. Tyler took a step back. Christine, I think we should. But Christine couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Could only stand there frozen as she watched her entire career, her entire life, crumble before it even began to fall. Because Vivienne Winters had just handed her daughter to Patricia Chin, pulled out her phone, and made a call while never breaking eye contact with Christine. The expression on Vivienne's face wasn't angry. That would have been better. It was something far more terrifying. It was the look of someone with unlimited power who had just been given a reason to use every bit of it. Before we go any further, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Because what's about to happen is going to be the most satisfying moment you've seen in a long time. Justice doesn't always come. But when it does, when it's delivered by someone with the power to back it up, it's beautiful. Here's what I want to know: if you had the power that Vivienne Winters has in this moment, what would you do? Would you show mercy? Or would you bring down the full weight of justice? Tell me in the comments, because Vivienne's about to make a choice that will echo through that entire airline. Christine tried to move, tried to walk away, tried to disappear into the crowd. But Tyler grabbed her arm. Don't run. That'll make it worse. Worse? Christine's voice cracked. How could it possibly be worse? And that's when security started walking toward them. Not airport security. Private security. 3 men in suits, moving with purpose, their eyes locked on Christine Valdez. Vivienne had made one phone call. One. And Christine's world was already ending. The security team reached Christine and Tyler within seconds, but they didn't grab anyone. They didn't need to. They simply positioned themselves, a clear message that no one was going anywhere. And then Vivienne Winters began walking toward them. She moved through the crowded arrivals hall like she owned it, which, in a way, she did. Every step deliberate. Every movement radiating controlled power. Naomi's hand clasped tightly in hers, and you could see the shift in the little girl. She wasn't shrinking anymore. Wasn't trying to disappear. Because her mother was here, and suddenly the world felt safer. Other passengers from Flight 447 had started to notice what was happening. Some recognized Vivienne from business news. Others just sensed that something significant was unfolding. Phones came out. People positioned themselves to watch. The crowd formed a loose circle, giving space but staying close enough to witness. Christine stood frozen, Tyler beside her looking like he wanted to sink into the floor. Vivienne stopped about 5 feet away, her eyes locked on Christine with an intensity that could cut glass. When she spoke, her voice was calm. Dangerously calm. The kind of calm that comes right before a storm. Christine Valdez, correct? Christine's mouth was dry. She tried to summon her professional demeanor, that friendly flight attendant persona she'd perfected over 15 years. A nervous smile flickered across her face. Yes. How can I help you, ma'am? The audacity of that question hung in the air for a moment. Vivienne tilted her head slightly, and when she spoke again, her voice dropped even lower, forcing everyone to lean in to hear. You can start by explaining why you refused to feed my daughter, ignored her documented food allergies, and systematically humiliated her for 6 hours while she was under your care as an unaccompanied minor. Each word landed like a hammer blow. Christine's smile vanished. Her hands started shaking. There must be some mistake. I treat all passengers with the same. Stop. Vivienne's single word cut through Christine's stammering. Don't insult my intelligence or waste my time with lies. Patricia Chin stepped forward from the crowd, her phone held up. I documented everything. Photos. Timestamps. Witness accounts. Would you like to see them? She didn't wait for an answer. She started scrolling through her evidence out loud. 10:47 a.m., you denied Naomi the salmon meal available to all first-class passengers and lied about membership tiers that don't exist. 11:03 a.m., you served her beef despite her documented allergy. 11:52 a.m., you brought her water in a plastic cup while serving glassware to every other first-class passenger. 1:23 p.m., you ignored her call button for 7 minutes while responding to another passenger's within 15 seconds. Other passengers from the flight were nodding, stepping closer. Some pulled out their own phones. A woman in her 30s spoke up. I saw it too. I was in row 5. The way you treated that little girl was disgusting. A businessman added, I almost said something. I wish I had. More voices joined in. A chorus of witnesses who'd stayed silent during the flight but were finding their courage now. Christine's face had gone from pale to red, sweat beading on her forehead. These people are misunderstanding what they saw. I was following protocol. And that's when Gerald Hartwick tried to slip away. He'd been standing off to the side, suddenly very interested in his phone, edging toward the exit. Vivienne's eyes snapped to him. You! Gerald froze. The man who laughed when my child was being mistreated. The man who questioned where her parents were while she sat there, denied food, soaking wet from a spill that should have been prevented. Stay. It wasn't a request. It was a command. And something in Vivienne's voice made it clear that running would be a very bad idea. Gerald turned slowly, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. Look, I didn't mean. You didn't mean what? To mock an 11-year-old child? To participate in her humiliation? Stay exactly where you are. Vivienne pulled out her phone, never breaking eye contact with Christine. She dialed a number and put it on speaker. 2 rings. Then a male voice answered. Vivienne, what can I do for you? David? Vivienne Winters. I'm at Heathrow arrivals. I need you to pull the flight manifests and complete video footage for transatlantic flight 447 that just landed. Every camera angle. Every second. I also need the complete employment files for Christine Valdez, and she glanced at Tyler's name badge, Tyler Brennan. Right away, Ms. Winters. Give me 10 minutes. Christine's eyes went wide. Tyler looked like he might pass out. The voice on the phone continued, should I alert legal? Yes. And I want a full audit of passenger complaints for the past 5 years cross-referenced with crew assignments. Focus on patterns. Consider it done. Vivienne ended the call and looked back at Christine. That was David Chen, the new COO of Transatlantic Airways. Your ultimate boss. He reports directly to me. Patricia gasped softly. David? That's our son. Vivienne turned to Patricia with the first hint of warmth she'd shown since this confrontation began. Your son is brilliant, Mrs. Chen. I hired him 3 months ago specifically to help restructure this airline's culture. Seems we have our first case study. Christine tried one more time, her voice desperate now. Ms. Winters, with all due respect, I have 15 years of exemplary service. Stop. Vivienne's voice could have frozen fire. I accessed your personnel file during my car ride here. You don't have 15 years of exemplary service. You have 15 years of documented complaints. 12 formal grievances filed against you for discriminatory behavior. All dismissed. All buried. All swept under the rug because you knew exactly how to charm your supervisors and because the previous management didn't want to deal with the paperwork. She pulled up something on her phone. Mrs. Johnson, 2019. Denied meal service, claimed there was no more available despite empty carts. Mr. Patel, 2021. Repeatedly mispronounced his name despite corrections, served him last despite being in first class. The Lee family, 2022. Children ignored while white children in similar seats received activity packs and extra attention. Christine's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Should I continue? Because I have 8 more incidents documented right here. The pattern is clear, Christine. You've spent 15 years abusing your position. Making people feel small. Making children feel worthless. And the old management let you get away with it because addressing it would have been uncomfortable. The security team shifted closer. Vivienne's voice dropped even lower, and somehow that made it more powerful. Christine Valdez, you are terminated effective immediately. Your employee credentials are being revoked as we speak. You will never work for any airline I have influence with, which, given my holdings, is most of them. Security will escort you from this airport. You have 15 minutes to collect your things from the crew lounge. You can't do this. Christine's voice cracked, becoming shrill. I have rights. I have a union. You absolutely have rights, and I encourage you to exercise them. File a grievance. Hire a lawyer. Sue me if you want. My legal team is excellent, and they'll enjoy deposing every passenger who witnessed your behavior today. They'll enjoy pulling every complaint that was filed and ignored. They'll especially enjoy reviewing the 6 hours of video footage showing you systematically abusing a child in your care. Vivienne stepped closer, and her voice became softer but somehow more devastating. You hurt my daughter, Christine. You looked at an 11-year-old child and decided she was less deserving of basic human decency because of the color of her skin. That's not a policy violation. That's not a customer service failure. That's a moral bankruptcy I will not allow anywhere near my company. Security moved in, one on each side of Christine. Wait. Christine grabbed her bag. You can't. But she could. And she did. As security began to escort Christine away, she tried one last desperate plea. Tyler. Tell them I'm not like this. Tyler stood there, and for a long moment, he didn't speak. Then quietly, he said, You denied a child food because of her race, Christine. That's exactly what you're like. Christine's face crumbled as security led her away, her protests growing fainter as they disappeared into the crowd. Vivienne turned to Tyler, and he visibly tensed. Tyler Brennan. Yes, ma'am. His voice shook. You helped my daughter when no one else would. You tried to intervene despite knowing it could cost you your job. You've been with the airline for 6 months? Yes, ma'am. You're coming with me. Tyler's face went white. Ma'am, I tried to do more, I should have. Vivienne held up a hand. You're not in trouble, Tyler. We're going to talk about your future at this airline. A much better one than you have now. 40 minutes later, they sat in the British Airways lounge that Vivienne had executive access to. She'd arranged for privacy in a corner section, away from other travelers. Naomi sat with a proper meal in front of her. Real food. The good kind. She was eating slowly, savoring each bite like someone who'd been denied sustenance and was still processing that she was allowed to have it. Tyler sat across from Vivienne, nervous energy radiating off him in waves. Vivienne leaned forward. Tyler, I'm promoting you to crew supervisor. Training starts Monday. You'll be working directly with David Chen and our new HR director to completely redesign our sensitivity and service protocols. You'll help us identify other crew members who behave like Christine and remove them. You'll help us train the good ones to speak up when they see injustice. Tyler's mouth fell open. Ms. Winters, I don't know what to say. Say yes or no. But know that what you did today, trying to help despite the cost, that's the kind of moral courage I need in leadership. Not the 15-year veterans who learned how to game a broken system. The people who actually care. Yes. The word tumbled out. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Winters. Vivienne's expression softened slightly. Thank Naomi. She's the one who reminded me why I bought this airline in the first place. To fix exactly this kind of rot. She turned to her daughter, reaching across to squeeze her hand. Baby, I'm sorry I wasn't there. Naomi looked up from her meal, and despite everything, she managed a small smile. You're here now. Those 3 words held so much. Forgiveness. Understanding. And the relief of a child who no longer had to face the world alone. Patricia and Robert Chen appeared at the entrance to their private section. Vivienne stood immediately. Mrs. Chen, Mr. Chen. Please, sit. They settled into the comfortable chairs, and Vivienne's professional mask slipped away entirely. She was just a mother now, talking to the people who'd protected her child. I can never thank you enough for what you did today. For seeing my daughter. For caring when you didn't have to. Patricia waved her hand dismissively. That woman needed to be stopped. But your daughter? She looked at Naomi with genuine admiration. She handled herself with more grace than most adults. You raised an extraordinary young lady. Robert nodded. Most kids would have fallen apart. She kept her dignity. Naomi ducked her head, embarrassed by the attention but glowing from the praise. Vivienne's eyes got misty. She's stronger than I ever was at her age. Stronger than I gave her credit for. They talked for another 20 minutes. Vivienne insisted on covering the Chen's entire London trip, upgrading their hotel, arranging restaurant reservations. Patricia protested, but Vivienne wouldn't hear it. You protected my child when I couldn't. There's no price I can put on that. Eventually, the Chens excused themselves to continue their anniversary celebration, and it was just Vivienne and Naomi again. They gathered their things and headed toward the exit. Vivienne had arranged for a car service, and their driver was waiting. As they walked through the terminal, Vivienne looked down at her daughter. No more traveling alone until you're ready. Deal? Naomi looked up at her mom and smiled, a real smile this time. Deal. They walked a few more steps in comfortable silence. Then Naomi asked, in that casual way kids do, Mom? Can we get ice cream? Vivienne laughed, the sound echoing through the terminal, releasing hours of tension. Absolutely. Anything you want. We'll get the biggest, most ridiculous ice cream sundae London has to offer. With extra chocolate? With everything. Extra chocolate, extra whipped cream, extra everything. Naomi grinned, and for the first time since boarding that flight, she looked like the 11-year-old kid she was supposed to be. Not small. Not invisible. Not less than. Just a girl excited about ice cream with her mom. They walked toward the exit, hand in hand, Naomi's purple beads clicking softly with each step. The automatic doors slid open to reveal a London evening, lights twinkling in the distance, a whole summer of possibilities stretching out ahead of them. And somewhere behind them, in an airport security office, Christine Valdez was being processed out of her career, out of her identity, out of the power she'd abused for so long. Justice doesn't always come. But when it does, when the right person has the power to deliver it, it's beautiful. Here's the truth that this story should burn into your heart: children deserve dignity. Period. Not because of who their parents are. Not because of how much money their families have. Not because of what they can do for you. But because they're human beings deserving of basic respect and kindness. When we see injustice, we have a responsibility to act. Whether you're a fellow passenger like Patricia Chen, who documented and spoke up, or a coworker like Tyler Brennan, who tried to help despite the risk, or someone with power like Vivienne Winters, who used every resource available to protect not just her own child, but to dismantle a system that allowed cruelty to flourish. Silence is complicity. Inaction is a choice. And every single person on that flight who saw what was happening and said nothing bears some responsibility for Naomi's pain. But the people who did act, they changed everything. They reminded us that one person with courage can shift the trajectory of another person's entire life. So I want to know, what would you have done in this situation? Would you have been Patricia, documenting and speaking up? Would you have been Tyler, risking your job to help? Or would you have been one of the silent passengers, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene? Be honest with yourself. Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story moved you, if it made you feel something, if it reminded you that justice matters and that standing up for others is worth the cost, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because we're going to keep telling stories about courage and justice and people who refuse to accept cruelty as normal. 3 weeks after this incident, Vivienne Winters held a company-wide meeting at Transatlantic Airways. She announced the termination of 8 more crew members whose patterns of discriminatory behavior had been uncovered in the audit she ordered. She implemented mandatory bias training. She restructured the complaint system so grievances couldn't be buried. She promoted 3 junior crew members who'd tried to speak up but been silenced. And she created the Naomi Winters Foundation, specifically dedicated to protecting unaccompanied minors who face discrimination while traveling. Because her daughter's suffering would mean something. Would change something. Would prevent other children from feeling invisible and worthless at 35,000 feet. Christine Valdez filed a wrongful termination lawsuit. It was dismissed within 3 months. The video footage alone was damning enough, but the testimony of 12 passengers, the documented complaints, and the pattern of behavior made her case impossible to defend. She never worked in aviation again. Tyler Brennan became Transatlantic's youngest VP of Customer Experience by the time he was 28. Under his leadership, the airline's customer satisfaction scores increased by 43%, and they became known as the most inclusive airline in the industry. Gerald Hartwick issued a public apology after video of his comments went viral. It didn't help. His company's board asked him to step down after the backlash. But most importantly, Naomi Winters spent that summer with her mother. They got ice cream 17 times. They visited every museum in London. They talked. They laughed. They healed. And when September came and it was time to start 6th grade, Naomi flew home on Transatlantic Airways, first class, with her mother beside her. Tyler Brennan was on that flight, now a supervisor, and he personally made sure Naomi had everything she needed. As they served the meal, Tyler knelt down beside her seat and asked, "What would you like today, Naomi?" She looked at the menu, smiled, and said, "The salmon, please." And this time, nobody told her no.